Hey, I just want to say what's up to everybody, and also just come and share some thoughts that you probably don't even really want to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway. A lot of people have been saying that basically Christianity is white supremacy, and that's not true. And the reason that I'm saying that is because when I look at the early church, it had nothing to do with any of that stuff. A lot of that stuff happened thousands of years later. And unfortunately, has basically painted a picture, that most people think Christianity, not most, but a lot of people think Christianity is a religion of white supremacy. The religion of white supremacy is a religion within itself. It has nothing to do with the Christian faith whatsoever. Unfortunately, people have used their own lust and desires and tried to mask it with religion, with Christianity specifically. I think of the early church, that's my reference point to Christianity. I can't get away from that because when I think of the early church, I think of it as a communal church, but also a diverse church. The book of Acts even talks about all the people that were at the upper room. You had Egyptians, you had Syrians, you had all kinds of different people. Also, when you go to the book of Acts, it, specifically highlights even like the Ethiopian eunuch who was black. Ethiopia, of course, was just a general name for Africans then. So he went down to, Africa and spread the gospel there. When you talk about the Ethiopian church, even the Ethiopian church within itself, you got to keep also in mind this. A lot of people, I've been hearing this thing lately where, I've gotten into debates where, a white man, brought Ethiopian Christianity to Ethiopia. That is not true. Here's the reason that I'm saying that is not true. There were a lot of Christians in Ethiopia before that. The only thing that Abba Salama, aka Prometheus, did bring was just basically his bishopry. And the thing is, they actually sent him to Egypt to be a bishop. So it's almost like they sent him. And technically, if you want to get it down to that, he pretty much was raised up in Ethiopia because he was trapped or whatever. He was shipwrecked and came up in the faith with them. And he was a Christian in general, but there were a lot of Ethiopian Christians there. There's even writings that talk about how much he loved the faith of the Ethiopians, but they didn't have a bishop, they didn't have, an Abba over them, like in that sense, but they still practiced the faith. So like they sent him to Egypt to get that. It's not like he brought that religion to them. So yeah. Also, when you think about just, Christianity within itself, you have to think of it in an Eastern sense. You cannot think of it in a Western sense. And I'm not trying to take away from a lot of the liberationists because there are liberationists, especially black liberationists, that pretty much were Christians. As a matter of fact, not I don't mean to go too far off, but it's still around the same subject. A lot of black liberationists actually were the ones to, pretty much conjugate the truth of what was in the Bible versus what these white supremacists were trying to program black people with. You had, a lot of people will praise Nat Turner, and even Marcus Garvey, but they don't realize that their very faith they were Christians. You can't take that away from them, Shoot. The AOC, the African Orthodox Church, formed, George McGuire, who formed that church, was a Garveyite. You can't get away from that. But getting back to basically like Christianity. Sorry, I'm like, man, it's so weird being put on the spot, but I'm saying it anyway. You cannot say that this, when you look at it in the early church sense of it, not in a Western sense of it, you cannot put that as a religion of white supremacy because it did not start that way. And for thousands of years, it wasn't that way. Now, when we get to the Roman Catholic Church, they had a part to do with that. But thousands of years before even the so-called Catholic Church formed, you had, believers of all races not only living for Christ, but also being martyred. I mean, we got Felicity and Perpetua. I mean, there's so many different saints, martyrs and all that. Too many to name right now. But when you even I've heard people even say Constantine basically made Christianity, which is not true. The reason that Constantine, his only role in the faith of Christianity was basically, for one, he stopped persecution of Christians, which was cool. I mean, who wants to be persecuted? No one, right? Two, he made it so basically a lot of the believers worldwide, keep in mind, they were already believers worldwide. The traditions that we have in our church and the letters that went out from people like Paul and Timothy and all that, he just brought them all together because there was some kind of conflict with this dude named Arius. And Arius pretty much was kind of trying to make his own version of Christianity. So a lot of them just said, heck, we got to come together because some people are getting confused. Let's just write all this stuff down based on our traditions, and basically let's talk about all this stuff and let's show everyone what we believe worldwide. And so they came from everywhere, man. And just, some of them were even victims of persecution. One dude had his eye out because he got persecuted and all that. But that's a whole nother subject. Again, I mention all that to say that they all came together. It was no conspiracy or whatever. They came together. And the funny thing about it, and this is the reason that I don't fall for the Constantine thing, because Constantine was bummed that they could not resolve the issue with Arius. He was really pissed off. He was like, man, you guys believe the same thing. And a lot of the Orthodox believers were like, no, we don't. And Arius was like, basically trying to make himself look like a victim or whatever, because they opposed him. And so what happened was basically like, Arius, Constantine was more in favor of Arius. And here's one of the reasons that there's proof. He pretty much had Athanasius like exiled because Athanasius wasn't having it. And I think Saint Nick punched Arius in the face. But yeah, and so Constantine basically like was on something where it's like, no, you guys all believe the same thing, basically trying to, I mean, it's one thing to have an ecumenical council, but it's another thing to make people believe something that they don't. And a lot of the Orthodox believers were like, nah, but they drew up the creed anyway, just to show like, hey, this is what we believe, we're going to do this. And whether they had Constantine's opinions or not, they did that. So a lot of people don't know this too. Constantine was so down with Arius to the point where even on his deathbed, he was baptized as an Arian Christian. Now, Arianism basically has nothing to do with what a lot of us Orthodox folks believe. It's more in line with what a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses believe. Well, modern Jehovah's Witnesses, I'll say that. I can't say that it's the exact same thing, but there's a lot of similarities to the two. And a lot of Orthodox believers did not believe that. So, I mean, if Constantine is recognized in our church, which I don't know why, I will say it's because he kind of helped stop Christian persecution and also brought a lot of the believers together to put together the Nicene Creed. It was not some kind of conspiracy where, you had, basically Rome taking over everything. As a matter of fact, Christians were hated by Romans for the first 3,000 or 4,000 years, man. But what happened also is like you had elements of Roman culture taking, Christianity and using it for their own lust and desires, which is why, years later in 1054, you had that split. And unfortunately, man, they ran amok with it. I mean, shoot, they not only persecuted a lot of Orthodox Christians to the point where even a lot of Orthodox had to get, Muslim backing. And unfortunately, that did not work in their favor because they ended up being persecuted by like Muslims as well. And I'm not hating on Muslim. I have Muslim friends. Just as a side note, this is just history. And And I'm not trying to hate, because I know there's a lot of peaceful Muslims too. I mean, that's a whole nother subject. But so what happened, basically, like 1054 AD, the church, you know, I mean, some people said the church split. I'll just say West split from the East. And the Western church, basically, you know, the so-called Roman Catholic Church became very imperial and just did a lot of things that we can see the results of now with slavery and all the other stuff that they've done. Granted, I'm not going to discount, for all the Catholic listeners, I'm not going to discount all those that have fought against such tyranny and evil. But at the same time, I'm just, like I said, I'm just giving truth. I'm giving facts as far as history goes. That's where a lot of the slavery and stuff began. You know, when that broke, as far as Christianity goes, the history of Christianity and slavery, that's when some people were using religion basically as a mask to get what they wanted. And the Catholic Church, you know, they were definitely in line with all that. You know, I've never seen anything with the Orthodox Church in line with it, especially the Far East or Oriental Orthodox Church. You know, I didn't tell you guys what where I come from. I am a Christian, yeah, but I'm an Orthodox Christian. I didn't always grow up in an Orthodox church. I actually grew up in a non-denominational, diverse church. You know, we had all different races and everybody from every different background, you know, from like, you know, urban cats to kind of rich cats, you know. So for me, most of what I grew up in was that. And then, you know, I started, you know, questioning things based on a lot of my friends who, you know, were from different religions and different walks of life, and ended up basically being Orthodox. You know, I never thought that I would end up being an Orthodox Christian. I'm an Ethiopian Orthodox Christian at that, or Tawahedo. I like to say Tawahedo because people always associate, you know, Ethiopian people, you know, but I am of African descent, obviously, but from what I know, I'm not Ethiopian, like just, you know, from like Aksum or anything like that. Most likely I'm West African. But anyway, and I'll say this, even with like a lot of the earlier, not just the earlier Christians, but also the liberationist Christians, you know, those that fought against slavery, you know, those were the ones that were really, you know, showing what it was all about to live, you know, and not be some kind of devil type mentality, you know, when the Bible was being used the wrong way. You know, I mean, look at Nat Turner. I mean, that's the reason that they did not want the slaves to read, because they thought, well, heck, man, they read this and they find out that the way that we've been teaching it is wrong, then then we're going to be basically like fought against. And they were. You know, I mean, shoot, you had not only, you not only had, how could I say it? You not only had the abolitionist movement, you know, especially from people like Frederick Douglass, people like Nat Turner, people like, you know, Harriet Tubman, and the list goes on, but you also had the later Black liberationist movement, and even people like Marcus Garvey and George McGuire, who, you know, Marcus Garvey, man, I mean, he's the reason that like a lot of even Rastas, you know, reference Ethiopia to this day, and talking about Haile Selassie, and a lot of the reasons that a lot of us are even Tawahedo as well too, because he was not only talking about Ethiopia, but also the spirituality and the God of Ethiopia. There's speeches about that. You know, then we get into people like, you know, there's so many different people. I don't understand how anyone could ignore that there were Christians that pretty much, Black Christians that were a part of not only just fighting against the system of white supremacy, but also, you know, championing empowerment. I mean, people like James H. Cone, people like, you know, Albert Cleage, you know, the man that brought the Shrine of the Black Madonna Church, you know, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, probably the biggest example today is Jeremiah Wright, but I can understand why people are upset because of what has happened with you know, Christianity and how it was used to enslave and murder people, you know. But put it like this. Anyone could wear a mask, but, you know, you see their true face when that mask is taken off. You have to look at it from the earliest source, you know. When I think of Christianity, I don't think of the Ku Klux Klan, because I obviously didn't, you know, I know better. I don't think of white supremacy. I think of basically the early church. And even before I was Orthodox, I knew that, you know, I knew better than that, based off of not only just what I, you know, grew up in church with, but also what, you know, even our own Black American history of Christianity, you know, when it comes to liberationist movements and also the abolitionist movement represented. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of went around. I'm going to probably do a part 2 to this because I feel like I was just a little scattered. But if you'd like, give me your opinions. It'd be nice if I don't get any hate, you know, just reasonable conversation. I'm not tripping off of anybody. If you know, I prefer that you wouldn't be hateful, but hey, you know, everyone has their opinion. Hopefully, we could have a reasonable conversation. As my Rasta homie said, let's reason it out instead of just, you know, just throwing hate at people. But I just have to represent for those Christians that not only have done things to help elevate, especially Black people, but also empower and just have been liberation. You know, I could understand, a lot of people will say that the Black church, there's no sign of that form of liberationist movement in the church anymore. You know, maybe this video will change that. I don't know. And I can't say that there isn't either, you know, because I don't go to every church, you know, but I do know that there's brothers and sisters out here that are, you know, they're a lot of people that you would never think that were Christians. I mean, look at Cornel West or people like, you know, Eric Dyson and, you know, Michelle Alexander, you know, like these people are out there, they're believers too. And they've, you know, done lots of stuff. I mean, there's lots more people. I mean, shoot. Anyway, you could like, dislike, but yeah, I'd like to just dialogue with you. I'm probably going to do a part 2 of this that's a little bit more direct instead of scattered. I hope everybody gets what I'm saying. It's kind of weird recording yourself on video. Peace to all of you guys.